The footprints appeared on a Tuesday morning. At first, I didn't think much of them. By Friday, I was carrying a flashlight everywhere. And by the second week, I stopped sleeping because somebody was coming to my tower at night, and I never once saw them arrive. This happened during the summer of 2018. I worked as a seasonal fire lookout in western Montana. The assignment lasted 4 months. My station sat on top of a remote mountain ridge. The nearest town was over 20 miles away. The nearest occupied structure was even farther. Most days were uneventful. Watch the forest. Monitor weather. Report smoke. Repeat. Honestly, I enjoyed it. The isolation never bothered me. At least not initially. The tower itself stood about 40 feet above the ground. A small cabin mounted on steel supports. The only way up was a long staircase. Once inside, I could see for miles. Dense forest stretched across the horizon in every direction. Beautiful during the day. Different story at night. The first footprint appeared after a rainstorm. I climbed down the tower one morning and noticed boot prints in the mud. Fresh prints. Not mine. Immediately, I assumed another ranger had stopped by. Simple explanation. No big deal. Except nobody had. That afternoon, I radioed the district office. Nobody reported visiting my station. Nobody planned to visit. Nobody even knew about the footprints. The discovery felt strange, but not frightening, at least not yet. Then more footprints appeared. Every morning. Different locations. Different patterns. Same boot tread. Some mornings the prints circled the tower. Some mornings they stopped near the stairs. One morning they led directly beneath my cabin. Then disappeared. That detail bothered me most, because the footprints never showed where the person came from, or where they went, just where they'd been standing. By the second week, I started checking the area before going to bed. Nothing. Every evening the ground remained untouched. Every morning new tracks appeared. Eventually I installed a motion light near the staircase. Problem solved. Or so I thought. The following night, the light activated at 2:14 a.m. I woke immediately. The tower sat completely dark except for the motion light below. The beam illuminated part of the staircase. Part of the clearing. Nothing else. I grabbed binoculars and looked down. Nobody. No movement. No sound. Nothing. The light switched off. A few minutes later, it activated again. Then again. Then again. Each time I checked. Each time I saw nothing. Morning arrived. And so did new footprints. This time they appeared directly beneath the motion light. My stomach tightened, because whoever was visiting clearly knew the light existed, and apparently didn't care. The following week brought more strange incidents. Small things. Subtle things. Equipment slightly moved. Storage containers shifted. A chair on the observation deck positioned differently. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to make me question myself. Then one evening I discovered something that genuinely frightened me. A note, folded neatly on the staircase. The paper contained only 3 words. Nice view up here. My blood ran cold. Because there was only one way to place that note. Someone had climbed the tower. While I was there. Maybe while I slept. Maybe while I was watching the forest. The realization completely changed the situation. I reported everything immediately. Forest Service personnel visited the next day. Searched the area. Found nothing. No campsites. No vehicles. No evidence. Nothing. Several rangers suggested hikers, hunters, pranksters, reasonable explanations, but none explained how somebody repeatedly reached the tower without being seen, especially at night. The situation escalated 2 nights later. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard footsteps. Actual footsteps. On the stairs. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. My entire body locked up, because there was absolutely no mistaking the sound. Someone was climbing toward the cabin. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Closer. 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 I grabbed my radio, prepared to call for help. Then the footsteps stopped, directly outside. Several seconds passed. Silence. Then a knock. 3 slow knocks. I don't think I've ever felt fear like that. The tower sat miles from civilization. No backup. No nearby assistance. Just me, and whoever stood outside. I called out. No answer. Another knock. Then silence. The rest of the night passed without incident. No more sounds. No movement. Nothing. At sunrise, I finally opened the door. Nobody. No person. No equipment. Nothing. Just fresh footprints, standing directly outside, facing the door. The district office took the situation seriously after that. Additional patrols were conducted. Searches expanded. More personnel visited the area. Eventually, investigators located a hidden campsite roughly 2 miles from the tower. Someone had clearly been living there. Food supplies, blankets, tools, personal belongings, everything necessary for long-term occupancy. The individual responsible was eventually identified as a transient who'd been moving through remote wilderness areas for years. Apparently, he enjoyed observing isolated locations, fire towers included. Thankfully, he was located and removed from the area. But one detail still bothers me. Among the items recovered from the campsite were handwritten notes, observations, schedules, descriptions, including entries about me. When I woke up, when I cooked, when I used binoculars, when lights turned off, weeks of observations. Because while I thought somebody was occasionally visiting the tower, the reality was much worse. He'd been watching the tower the entire time. The light appeared at exactly 11:43 p.m. every night, not around 11:43, not close to 11:43, exactly. At first, I thought it was a hiker. Then I thought it was another lookout tower. Eventually, I started dreading sunset, because whatever was carrying that light seemed to be getting closer. This happened in the summer of 2020. I was working as a seasonal fire lookout in Central Oregon. The assignment lasted nearly 5 months. The tower sat on a remote ridgeline overlooking thousands of acres of national forest. The nearest paved road was over 15 miles away. The nearest occupied cabin was even farther. Most days were peaceful. Watch for smoke, log weather conditions, monitor radio traffic. Simple, boring even, until the light appeared. The first sighting happened during my 3rd week on duty. Around 11:43 p.m., I stepped outside to enjoy the cooler air. That's when I noticed it. A faint white light deep within the forest, far below my tower. At first, I assumed it belonged to a vehicle. The explanation made sense, until I remembered something. There were no roads in that area. None. Still, I didn't think much of it. Maybe a camper. Maybe a hunter. Maybe another ranger. The light remained visible for roughly 10 minutes. Then disappeared. End of story. Or so I thought. The next night it returned. Same location. Same brightness. Same time, 11:43 p.m. The precision immediately caught my attention. Because nature isn't precise. People are. I watched through binoculars. The light appeared stationary. Not moving. Not flashing. Just glowing. Then around midnight, it vanished. The pattern continued for nearly a week. Every night, 11:43 p.m. The exact same light. The exact same position. The exact same duration. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I reported it over the radio. The response surprised me. Apparently, another lookout stationed nearly 20 miles away had reported seeing the same thing. That answer should have reassured me. Instead, it made the mystery bigger, because now multiple people were observing it. The district office checked records. No authorized campsites existed in that area. No active crews. No research teams. Nothing. Yet the light continued. Night after night. Then one evening it moved. Only slightly, but enough to notice. My stomach tightened immediately, because after nearly 2 weeks of perfect consistency, any change felt significant. The light wasn't in its normal position. It appeared closer, not dramatically closer, just enough. The next night it moved again. Closer. Then again. Closer. A pattern emerged. Every few nights, the light advanced. Always toward the tower. I started documenting everything. Distances, angles, times, photographs. The evidence became difficult to ignore. Whatever carried the light was gradually approaching. And somehow, that realization terrified me. By early August, the light appeared much larger than before. Bright enough to see without binoculars. Bright enough that I started checking for it every night. Eventually, checking became waiting. Then waiting became anxiety. Because I knew exactly when it would appear. 11:43 p.m. Every time. One evening I decided to remain awake and monitor it continuously. No distractions. No radio. No books. Nothing. 11:43 p.m. arrived. The light appeared. This time, however, I noticed something new. Movement. Slow movement. The light wasn't stationary anymore. It was walking. My heart immediately started pounding. Because now there was no mystery about whether a person existed. A person absolutely existed. The question became, why were they out there? The light moved steadily through dense forest. No flashlight beam. No sweeping motion. Just a glowing point traveling between trees. Then it stopped, directly facing the tower. For nearly 20 minutes, it remained perfectly still. Watching. At least that's what it felt like. Then it disappeared. The following morning, I requested a field team investigate. Several forest personnel searched the area. The results were unsettling. No campsites. No vehicles. No recent fire activity. Nothing. Yet they did discover footprints. Fresh footprints. Leading deeper into the wilderness. Not toward roads. Not toward trails. Deeper. The investigation produced no answers. The light returned that evening. And the next. And the next. Each appearance increased my anxiety. Because by now it felt personal. Like the light wasn't simply existing. It was approaching. Then came the night that changed everything. September 3rd, 11:43 p.m. The light appeared. Much closer than ever before. So close I could estimate its location. Roughly half a mile from the tower. Maybe less. The sight immediately made my stomach drop. Because nobody should have been there. Nobody. I watched through binoculars. The light moved slowly uphill. Toward the ridgeline. Toward me. Then it stopped. Several minutes passed. Then something impossible happened. A second light appeared. Then a third. Then a fourth. My blood ran cold. Because suddenly there wasn't one person. There were multiple. The lights formed a rough line stretching through the trees. And every single one appeared aimed toward the tower. I radioed the district office immediately. Additional personnel responded. Search operations were planned for sunrise. The rest of the night felt endless. The lights remained visible until shortly after 2 a.m., then vanished simultaneously. Every single one. Gone. The search team arrived the next morning. They located the area where the lights had been observed, and eventually found something. A makeshift encampment. Several shelters hidden beneath dense tree cover. Food supplies. Tools. Personal belongings. Evidence of long-term occupation. According to investigators, a small group of transient individuals had been living deep within the forest for months. Possibly longer. Avoiding trails. Avoiding roads. Avoiding attention. The lights belonged to lanterns. The mystery finally had an explanation. A real explanation. A rational explanation. And honestly, that should have made me feel better. Instead, one detail kept bothering me. Because investigators also recovered notebooks. And inside one notebook appeared a rough drawing of my tower. Several pages contained observations. When lights turned on. When lights turned off. When I stepped outside. When I used binoculars. In other words, while I spent weeks watching the light, someone had been watching me. And by the end, they were close enough to see everything. The first time I heard the voice, I thought it was radio interference. The second time, I thought another lookout was messing with me. By the third time, I stopped using my name over the radio, because whoever was talking knew things they shouldn't have known. Things they couldn't have known. Things that were happening inside my tower. This happened during the summer fire season of 2021. I was assigned to a remote fire lookout station in northern Idaho. The tower sat alone atop a rocky ridge overlooking thousands of acres of forest. No neighbors, no nearby roads, no cell service, just radio communication and occasional supply deliveries. Most people imagine that kind of isolation sounds peaceful. For the most part, it was, until the voice started responding. The first incident happened around 10 p.m. I was completing routine weather reports before heading to bed. Everything felt normal. The radio traffic was minimal. A few ranger check-ins. Some fire reports. Nothing unusual. After finishing my transmission, I heard static. Then a voice. Copy that. The response itself wasn't strange. The problem was, it came from the wrong frequency. I checked my equipment. Double-checked it. Then checked again. Everything appeared normal. Eventually I shrugged it off. Radio interference happens. No big deal. The following night, it happened again. This time the voice responded after another routine transmission. "You're up late tonight." My stomach tightened slightly, because that wasn't standard radio communication. Not even close. I immediately asked for identification. No response. Just static. The incident bothered me, but not enough to report. Not yet. Then the third night happened. Around 11:30 p.m., I stepped outside the tower to watch a distant thunderstorm. The view was incredible. Lightning illuminated portions of the horizon. The forest below remained completely dark. After a few minutes, I returned inside. The radio crackled. Then the voice spoke. "Storm looks closer from outside." I froze. Every hair on my arm stood up. Because I hadn't mentioned the storm. I hadn't mentioned going outside. I hadn't transmitted anything. Yet somehow, the voice knew. For several seconds, I simply stared at the radio, trying to think of a logical explanation. There wasn't one. At least not one I liked. The next morning, I reported everything. The district office checked frequencies, equipment, nearby stations. Nothing. No unauthorized transmissions. No technical issues. No explanation. The official conclusion? Probably interference. I didn't believe that, because interference doesn't comment on your behavior. The incidents continued, night after night. Never long conversations. Just brief statements. Always unsettling. Always personal. "Coffee again? Long day today. You're awake earlier than usual." Every message referenced something accurate. Something specific. Something I hadn't transmitted. The realization became impossible to ignore. Whoever was talking somehow knew my routine. And that terrified me, because there were only two possibilities. Either someone was watching the tower, or someone had somehow accessed information they shouldn't have had. Neither explanation felt good. Eventually I started changing habits. Different schedules. Different routines. Different meal times. The voice adapted immediately, which only made things worse. One evening I deliberately left the tower lights off. Something I rarely did. Around midnight, the radio activated. "Dark tonight." My stomach dropped instantly, because now I knew. Someone was observing the tower directly. The question became, from where? The surrounding wilderness stretched for miles. Dense forest. Rocky ridges. Countless hiding places. Finding one person would be nearly impossible. Still, the Forest Service took things more seriously after that. Patrols increased. Searches expanded. Additional personnel visited the area. Nothing. No campsites. No vehicles. No signs of anyone nearby. Then one night the voice crossed a line. A line I'll never forget. I was writing notes inside the tower around 1 a.m. Completely alone. The radio remained silent for hours. Then static filled the room, and the voice said, "Blue notebook tonight." I stopped breathing, because sitting beside me was a blue notebook. Not visible from outside. Not visible through windows. Not visible anywhere. The notebook sat on a table inside the tower. The realization hit me immediately. Someone wasn't merely observing the tower. Someone had somehow seen inside. I reported the incident immediately. This time an investigation began. A serious one. Several law enforcement personnel became involved. Radio specialists became involved. Search teams became involved. Everyone wanted answers. Eventually investigators made an important discovery. Several miles from my station sat an abandoned communications relay site, a structure no longer officially used. The location provided a clear line of sight toward portions of my tower, and hidden nearby, they found evidence of occupation. Food, water, battery systems, radio equipment, lots of radio equipment. The discovery finally provided a potential explanation. Somebody had been monitoring communications, listening, observing. The mystery seemed solved, until investigators reviewed recovered materials. Because among the notebooks and equipment were pages of observations. Hundreds of pages, schedules, weather conditions, visitor logs, descriptions, including me, every routine, every habit, every pattern, weeks, possibly months. Someone had spent an extraordinary amount of time watching the tower. The individual responsible was eventually identified as a former communications enthusiast who had been illegally occupying remote public lands. The situation ended, at least officially, yet one detail still bothers me. Because after investigators removed the equipment, the radio transmissions stopped, for nearly 3 weeks. Then one evening, they returned, just once. One final transmission. No static, no interference, no background noise, just the voice, calm as ever, saying 4 words. Different tower this year. Then silence. Permanent silence. No further messages. No further activity. Nothing. Authorities never determined where that final transmission originated. And honestly, I'm not sure I want them to, because the possibility that somebody spent months watching me from the wilderness is disturbing enough. The possibility that they simply moved somewhere else afterward, that's much worse.